In today's video, we have tons of news to talk about. We have the latest trade talk around the Montreal Canadiens, Edmonton Oilers, and the Calgary Flames. We have a lot more information and updates on the Shea Pinto suspension, which is dominating the news that came out earlier today. We've learned a lot since the prior video. We also have some updates on some injuries and some other news regarding the Ottawa Senators that might be coming down the pipe, which could be significant for the organization as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have tons of news to talk about here today. Let's dive right in and get started. Try not to make this video too long, but we do have a lot to cover. Before we get into some of the more bigger news items, let's cross off a few of the smaller news items from around the league. First up, NHL veteran Zack Kassian has announced his retirement today. Kassian, of course, was a veteran of 12 NHL seasons. Recently this year, he did go to training camp, I believe it was with Anaheim, if I'm not mistaken, on a tryout. Did not end up getting signed. Ultimately was released. Couldn't find other contract opportunities, so he's calling it a career. He played with a variety of teams. You probably remember him probably most notably from his time with Edmonton, brief stint with Montreal, Vancouver. He's been around the league for over a decade, made the most of it. Certainly a guy who was not afraid to drop the gloves and, the rough stuff. Could be a pest to play against, and I think based on his skill set, carved out a pretty nice career. So we'd like to acknowledge Zack Kassian, and I'll wish him all the best in retirement. Some other quick updates from around the NHL. Philadelphia Flyers defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen has been injured and it's not progressing. The Flyers were hopeful he wouldn't be out too long, but it sounds at this point that it's going to be a lot more significant and bigger recovery than they ever expected. So he is going to be out for some time. They have made some recalls, including NHL veteran Victor Mete, who's come up from the American Hockey League, so he'll get more of an opportunity. I know the Flyers have some of their younger guys on the blue line that they want to give an opportunity as well to play big minutes in the AHL, so expect to see more of that and some of these other kind of older players to get more of an opportunity at the NHL level. We also saw the Pittsburgh Penguins recall a couple of players, including Zahorna and Hinostroza. They're both coming back up. As I've talked about in recent days, Kyle Dubas has not been pleased with the productivity, the effort, the whole bottom six of the forward group and the bottom pair defense as well. So he's looking for opportunities to shake things up. This is a way to kind of start, is to do an internal change with some of the personnel. He's been scouring the waiver wire, looking for some trades. We know that, top six wise with all the big names, that we're not going to expect anything, catastrophic or significant when it comes to trades out of Pittsburgh in that sense. But yeah, I expect Kyle Dubas with a slow start by the Penguins to consider kind of tinkering around the edges here and trying to spark his team. So we'll see what happens. These guys will get an opportunity, but don't be surprised if we do see more activity in Pittsburgh if they continue to struggle. Now, we do have some significant updates on the whole Shea Pinto Ottawa suspension today. Before we get into that, a quick update on the Ottawa Senators as well. Artem Zub has been out the past 2 games with an injury after getting an Alex Ovechkin stick/puck up in his ear area of his helmet. Is going to miss a couple more games. The Sens are now on the road for the next 2 games, and he did not make the trip. They're on Long Island tonight to play the Islanders, and then they go to Pittsburgh. So he stayed back. After that, they have 4 days off, I suspect. So essentially that gives him an extra week basically to recover. So he's not on this trip. We'll get an extra week, and he should be able to hopefully return when they get back to their first home game after that brief road trip. But the bigger news of the day in Ottawa is Shea Pinto. Now, we put out that video around lunchtime today, which was shocked a lot of people to hear that Shea Pinto was being suspended by the NHL for 41 games. It's pretty significant, pretty harsh, and it was for violating gambling policies, is all we were told. The news first broke, I believe it was Elliotte Friedman. Other NHL reporters were following that up, saying they're hearing the same thing. The news did break later from the NHL, so we now have statements from the NHL, from the Ottawa Senators, and from Shea Pinto himself. The NHL was not saying a whole lot, just that they violated this policy. He's going to be suspended, and that they're not making any further comments on it. The team statement essentially said that, unfortunately for Shea Pinto, that he's a huge part of their team, but he made some poor choices, and that he's going to suffer the consequences, essentially. Like, they support the the suspension and policies put in place by the NHL. But it's at the same time, they're going to offer support to Pinto and welcome him back with open arms when he's ready and able to return. So that's good news. The earliest he's able to return would be January 21st against the Philadelphia Flyers. Thankfully, a couple of things that are unusual about this situation is that this punishment essentially for Pinto was negotiated between the league and the Players Association on Pinto's behalf. So essentially, this information's all kind of come together over the past couple of weeks. There's been a lot of details that have kind of been up and down. I've had a lot more chance to read and listen to a lot more of the stuff that's been more factually reported on this story. Essentially, this kind of investigation really came together in a few weeks' time. So remember a couple of weeks back, there was reports that Shea Pinto was in Ottawa. Everybody was getting excited. The fan base was like, oh, if he's here, he's going to be really close to signing. That means he's probably going to be in the lineup in the next few days. And then all of a sudden, he was there for like 2 days and he was gone. We were told by the media that he didn't want to be a distraction to his team and that, maybe by being in Ottawa, he was giving the Senators too much leverage to finish negotiations. And that's not the case at all. Now we know that was complete BS. What happened was while he was in Ottawa, that's when he found out he was under investigation. So he packed it up and went home because he knew he was likely facing a punishment, suspension, and was likely not going to be able to be signed or at least not be able to play right away anyway. So, of course, we didn't know all that at the time. Now we do. A lot of the things that we learned make more sense today on this Pinto situation. A couple of things I've seen a lot online today saying, well, if the NHL confirmed that he did not bet on hockey games, why is he being suspended? The NHL is so infiltrated with betting apps and betting companies because it's all over. I mean, you can't watch a hockey game without seeing a million ads about betting, whether it be on the screen, like they're everywhere. Some of them are sponsors for jerseys and helmets. You listen to any hockey podcast or a lot of other content, it's in your face constantly, right? The betting business is become a huge thing. And I kind of feel in some ways maybe the NHL and all of this whole situation is kind of maybe played a role and partially responsible. At the same time, you can't say that Pinto needed to be responsible here. But at the end of the day, people are saying he didn't do anything illegal. Why is he being suspended? It's not fair. Here's the thing. There's still rules in place. And we don't know the full extent of what he did. So you can't just say he wasn't betting on hockey, so therefore he's innocent, shouldn't be suspended at all. Because there's also words from Daily Faceoff and Frank Saravalli saying that one of his sources told them that the league investigation was centered around a sweep of gambling partners that revealed Pinto's connection to a third-party bettor. So it kind of sounds like if that's legit, that maybe he was providing information to a third party who was placing the bets, and that could have been somebody placing bets on hockey games. Obviously, Shea Pinto fully accepted responsibility for what he did and the punishment associated with it. So he definitely did something wrong. This is not a case of the NHL, obviously being ridiculous. At the same time, it's a lot of games, but they take that very, very seriously, and it's pretty well spawned out. If he bet on hockey games himself, he likely would have been evicted from the NHL, and I use the word eviction because he would have been allowed back. He probably would have been facing a lifetime ban. That's just likely what would have happened. So at the end of the day, we don't know 100% what happened. There's different stories out there, but he did violate policies in regards to betting. Now, just because you're allowed to bet doesn't mean that you can't violate how you bet. There's also been other players in other sports that have been suspended for using team facilities to make bets. So if you're in the players' lounge, you're at the rink, and then you're making bets, they don't want them doing that. What they do in their personal time in other sports, and if it's done legally, is okay. So NHL players are allowed to make bets. It's not that they can't do it, but there are rules around how they do it. And this sounds like there was some sort of third party involved, which is what he did was technically wrong. Now, there's not going to be an appeal either. I've seen a lot of people saying he should appeal this. This is harsh. This punishment was negotiated by the NHL and the NHLPA. So the NHLPA obviously would have the players back at all costs. They obviously had to acknowledge wrongdoing here. So what this is likely going to lead to is him signing a 1-year cheap contract with the Senators, playing January for the rest of the year. It was rumored that he was close to agreeing to a contract around $2.2 or $2.25 million for 2 years. That's now been rescinded. The Senators have rescinded all previous offers, and they're going to expect him to sign a contract now for at most, which would be his qualifying offer, maybe even league minimum for the rest of the year. And then they'll renegotiate a new contract in next summer. And hopefully they get that one done and get it right so he doesn't miss any time in camp next year. But at the same time, you got to think about it. He's going to be in the league 3 years. He had 1 year, his first full season. He was injured early in the year, just like Josh Norris was, missed the whole season. Last year, he had a full campaign, scored 20 goals, had a good year. This year, he's going to miss at least half the season. So he's not going to have a ton of leverage on a new contract anyway. So long term, as much as this sucks not to have him in their lineup, it might be a blessing from a cap perspective. They don't need to go out and make a cost-cutting trade right away now. They will likely still have to make some roster moves when it comes time to putting him in the lineup in January, but they don't have to move as much salary, and they might even be able to wiggle their way around that situation by demoting players to the minors or putting a player on waivers. They're not going to be forced to move somebody and break up a line that they don't want to. So there is some positive outcomes for them as a team. Now, at the same time, they'd rather have Pinto playing. Don't get me wrong, but this is a unique situation the NHL has seen. So, I mean, with the laws the way they are, like in the rules around gambling, this is the first in its modern phase that we've seen that. There have been other players a long time ago that got into trouble for placing bets. It was a whole different scenario and whole different environment as far as how betting was, kind of running everything back then. So, at the same time, like this is a pretty big deal. Not the news we were thinking about how there'd be resolution on the Pinto situation. However, there is some other rumors circulating about the Ottawa Senators. Now, this other rumor has been enough sources are talking about it behind the scenes that I think there has to be something to it, but we will see. There is speculation that the Ottawa Senators might be getting some sort of a punishment as a team for the whole Evgeny Dadonov situation and the no trade clause. If you think, do you remember that? When that happened, that's been a while. But obviously when Dadonov was with the Sens, remember they traded him to Vegas. Now he had a modified no trade. He had a list of, I think, 10 or 15 teams that he could block in a trade. Okay, when he was traded to Vegas, apparently, according to Kelly McCrimmon, the GM of the Golden Knights, he said that Pierre Dorion did the trade call by himself on the Ottawa side of things, which is unusual. There's usually 1 or 2 AGMs around, or there's usually about 2 or 3 of them on the call. It was not the case. All he was told by Dorion was that Dadonov never submitted his list of teams. So there's no list. So they never got the list. They never sent anything to Vegas. So when Vegas then later tries to trade him to Anaheim, he blocks the trade saying, hey, I sent you he and his agent had the list done up and they're on the team that's blocked. So they couldn't complete the trade. And Vegas was saying, well, we never got this information from the Senators. Anyways, at the time, Elliotte Friedman reported that the league was probably going to be making some changes to how some of these things are filed so that these type of situations don't happen again, and there was no repercussions for the Senators at that time. But now there's some word that there absolutely could be. Now, I've seen enough different sources talking about this online that there could be something to this. But either way, there is belief that there might be something coming down the pipe. We'll have to see it. Anyways, in between that and the Pinto situation and the whole, just the fact that the teams had a 3-3 start, that there is serious consideration being made that the owner, Michael Andlauer and Steve Staios, that there's a good chance that Pierre Dorion, the GM, is going to be relieved of his duties here soon. Now, doesn't mean this is all going to happen exactly like this, but there's a lot of chatter behind the scenes that there's something else going down and that Dorion could be losing his job soon. Now, being a new owner and everything, I wouldn't be shocked if that happened anyway, but it's something to keep an eye out for. We don't know about DJ Smith, the head coach. For all accounts, I kind of get the impression they kind of like him. I don't know for sure if they do. I don't know, but there's speculation that whenever the time comes for Dorion to leave, if it's not now, I expect it to likely happen within the season, that Peter Chiarelli might be the next GM. And I know a lot of fans aren't going to be happy with that because of how things went for him in Edmonton. But remember, he is a former Senators employee, was an AGM there before, had great success in Boston. Didn't duplicate that in Edmonton, but he was a consultant for Andlauer on his bid to buy the Senators. He's obviously local to the Ottawa area. And there's been a lot of talk before the sale ever closed that he would likely end up in some sort of role with the Sens once it was closed and once Andlauer had full control. So we'll see about that. But I don't know. I'd be surprised if this Dadonov thing is true. But I don't know. I've seen enough different connected people make mention of it today that it makes me think there's something to it. And if there is any kind of punishment coming for that, maybe there's something new discovered. Maybe they continue looking into things. I don't know. But yeah, either way, it sounds like Dorion's on the hot seat. And I don't know for sure that he's going to be let go today or tomorrow. It may not happen for a little while, but ownership is already pretty close to pulling the trigger on that from what people are saying behind the scenes. So we'll see what happens on that front. A few other notes from around the league, non-Ottawa related. A couple of teams, especially, I'm going to start with Calgary. Of course, we've seen the big defenseman Nikita Zadorov call out his team the other day, talking in an interview how that the team needs to be better and that there's some players that are only playing for themselves and not doing what's best for the team, and just really kind of laid it all on the line. We know Zadorov himself has made it clear, because he is at one of the pending UFAs on that team, that he's not in a hurry to re-sign, that he wanted to wait and see. And he probably won't sign with them until much later in the season, or maybe not at all. But a lot of talk is, well, who is he talking about, right? Makes you wonder. I mean, there are some other pending UFAs. You know, is it Lindholm? There's Tanev. I can't see Tanev being the target there, but it just makes you wonder who he's referring to. I mean, there are some other players that are struggling, but you don't often see a player kind of calling out his teammates like that and kind of being, you know, pretty cryptic on who he's kind of throwing the darts at here. But it makes you wonder. Now, Flames fans, you've been probably watched this team and might have a better insight than I might. I mean, I've seen the Flames a bit this year as well. I watch all the teams. I try to watch as many games as I can, but it's impossible to watch every minute of action all the time. That's just not reasonable. I don't care if anybody says they do that. I'm sorry, they don't. Even if they channel surf and catch what they can, it's you're doing good. Like, you know, I watch all the highlights. I make sure I watch as much as I can, but it's challenging, right? There's only so many hours in a day, especially if you have a night where there's, like a couple nights ago, where there's 16 games on. You can't watch it all. You watch as much as you can. You bounce around. So Flames fans might have a better perspective on that than me, but it makes me wonder if there could be some more shakeup in Calgary. We get a slow start, a bunch of pending UFAs. We know Hannafin's rumored to be close, but there's a bunch more guys still in expiring deals. Is Craig Conroy going to shake things up there? What's going to happen? You know, after making some changes, getting a new coach, there's no more excuses anymore. It's on the player personnel to get it done. So we'll see. Montreal's in a predicament where they're going to have to possibly do something with Caden Primo soon. There is word from Arpon Basu. Of course, we know that the Habs, based on their schedule, have a road trip coming up in a not too distant future here in a few days, and that guys like Gooley and Dvorak are pretty close to being able to return, and that for them to get back on the roster, they're going to have to make space. And they might run into a situation where carrying that third goaltender is just not possible anymore. So we might see a scenario by the weekend where, you know, a guy like Primo might not have a choice but to go on waivers. Or the Habs pull off a goalie trade. I'm not sure what it's going to be. If they put Primo on waivers, there's a good chance he gets claimed. At least that's their gut instinct, right? So we're going to have to see where that goes, but it wouldn't be shocking based on the roster needs that they do figure out, having to deal with the three goalie situation, and somebody has to be moved, or Primo has to go on waivers or something. That's what Arpon Basu was saying, that because they want to be able to carry as many players as they can on the road, and you don't need three goalies, but you could use an extra forward or defense instead, right? So we will see. We might be seeing, a kind of a conclusion to that setup with the Habs by the weekend, if that indeed is the process and strategy they're going to take. So I'm not sure what direction it'll be, but could be interesting. And in Edmonton, another player to watch as well is Connor Brown. We know Connor Brown has made his return this year after missing the majority of last year after a major injury early on, after only playing a handful of games with the Washington Capitals. Obviously, the connection with McDavid from his junior days, lots of appeal to go to Edmonton. The Oilers have had interest in Brown before, too. This isn't the first time, and it just seemed like a natural fit, but so far things haven't worked out. Now, so far, the Oilers also play tonight. We'll see if he can get it going, but 6 games in, no points. And he's also not good defensively. The defensive metrics are not looking good as well. The team has allowed more. I think they're -3 when he's on the ice or something like that. So at the same time, the way his contract is structured, he has a league minimum salary, but he has a big games played bonus. And it kicks in after game 10. And it's like over $3 million. So that'll be applied to their salary cap next year. So do you think they're going to let him get to that bonus if he's not earning it? I don't think so. So to me, there's a good chance you could see Connor Brown, if he doesn't pick it up after a couple more games, on waivers, and they could send him to the minors. Now, once they send him to the minors, I would say that they're also likely going to try to trade him, because what's the point of having him in the minors? He's going to have to stay there, depending on when they send him down. If they let him get to like game 9, they're going to have no choice but to leave him there for the rest of the year. Because if he comes back and plays one more game, they're going to have that big bonus kick in that'll impact their salary cap the following season. And they're not going to want that if the player's not working out. So, could they move him? With that bonus being there, it's unlikely. But at least if he does clear waivers, for example, and he gets demoted and he's playing well down there, they might be able to move him later on. A team might pick him up, and, maybe they're willing to give him a chance, but it's going to that because of the bonus attached. It's doubtful. So the Oilers are likely either going to be looking to replace Brown via trade. They might have to put him on waivers. I don't know, but the way and it's the sad, funny part here is his agent was Jeff Jackson, and Jeff Jackson's now the CEO of the team, which is not something you see very often. So it's kind of unusual that he negotiated that, then became the CEO, and now he might have to obviously, be part of the management team that moves on from that contract that he did as well. So we'll see where it goes, but Brown's definitely a player to watch in Edmonton with that big bonus looming in the not too distant future. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.